Happy birthday to
It's K-Squid's 5th birthday, and we're throwing a big party. Join us the afternoon of March 2nd at the Resource Center for Nonviolence in Santa Cruz for Squid Fest West, a benefit concert and silent auction to support K-Squid. The lineup includes soul and jazz singer Tammy Brown, heartfelt troubadour Keith Greninger, harmony trio Rapati Rose, singer-songwriter Lucas Lawson, sing-along cover Madness with the Coffee Zombie Collective, classic country with Andy Furman, folk with the Coast Ridge Ramblers, and original and vintage country and western swing with Poy Rogers, along with singer Ben James and other special guests. Join us for a playful celebration to support K-Squid. Tickets are available at eventbrite.com under Squid Fest West, or find the link on our website, ksqd.org. This will sell out, so get your tickets early. Limited Gold Circle tickets are available and doors open at 12:30. Squid Fest West is a K-Squidalicious production.
to you.
And that music means it's time for Talk of the Bay, K-Squid's local public affairs program brought to you each and every weekday right about 5 o'clock. My name is Rachel Ann Goodman. It's great to be here. Thanks for tuning in to the Squid. We are your local community radio station for the Monterey Bay area and beyond. We have listeners as far away as Alaska, North Dakota, and New Zealand. So welcome if you're listening in the middle of the night down under. It's great to have you along. Well, tonight we have a twofer, as we often do, two halves of a completely different whole. And we're going to start out with personal narratives, stories from the heart. Storytelling is an ancient tradition, as we all know. When someone tells a good yarn at a pub, we all gather around and tune in, or someone sitting by the fireplace and starts into a long winter's tale. We've been storytelling animals as humans for as long as we've been human. In fact, it's how we transfer culture. Up at UC Santa Cruz, it's been my great pleasure to be able to work with students on telling their own story. As part of John R. Lewis College, where I teach, there is a freshman class everybody takes as they're entering, which is called Social Justice and Community. And as part of that, they tell a slug story. Now, the slug, as you know, is the mascot of UC Santa Cruz. And they're not telling stories about slugs. They're telling their own reality, their own struggles, their own coming into being as young adults. Granted, everyone in this class is 18. If you can remember, if you're listening, what that felt like, how new so many things were, and how you're really struggling to find your feet. And given that this group that I was teaching was the COVID kids who had really been stuck in their bedrooms in the most formative time of high school, have been left out of a lot of the traditional coming of age rituals, and have been online just sort of doom scrolling and consuming content and watching endless YouTube videos and wondering what the future had in store. So a lot of these stories that you're going to hear are stories of coming out in various ways, whether it's learning to deal with competition, as is the first story, or dealing with eating disorders and other things that that we can only imagine struggling with. So this whole Slug Story project culminates at the end of the quarter with a performance in front of an audience of 200 of their peers. So that's a brave thing right there. It's modeled after the Moth Radio Hour, which, if you've heard, is a beautiful storytelling live kind of experience for radio. And we're hoping up at UC Santa Cruz to develop this into a whole storytelling class so students can spend the entire quarter. This project was just a piece of a 10-week class that involved lots of other things. But I want to just congratulate these 4 students you're going to hear for their bravery in agreeing to tell their story live and pulling it off in front of a big audience. So we're going to start out. First story is by Ryan Alex, and I will leave him to share with you his story.
Hello! My name is Ryan. Maybe you've noticed me. Hopefully you've noticed me. And right now you might be noticing that I'm a little bit on the energetic side. Maybe you're even wondering where that energy comes from. Sugar, caffeine, cocaine. No, that energy comes from the confidence I gained in speech and debate. Now, the first thing that people always ask me, as soon as they learned I was in speech and debate, was, were you any good? Did you win? And if we were to look at my win-loss ratio, we would certainly see a win-loss ratio. There was certainly some winning and some losing that happened. And believe me, it bothered me sometimes, the losing that I did. But I certainly noticed it during my college applications. But through it all, I had one goal: to make it to the national tournament, even if it was just once. Now, when I first joined speech and debate, we learned these things called vocal warm-ups. Now, if you're not familiar with what a vocal warm-up is, allow me to demonstrate. Look at me, a penguin you will see. Look at me, a penguin you will be. Penguins, attention! Penguins unite! And they were all like that. And believe me, okay. Now, what these were for was to test our projection and our intonation. But no, I knew the truth. What these really were, they were a sign to break our spirits by embarrassing us so much that by the end, our dignity was in shreds. Obviously, I avoided them whenever possible. But that didn't stop me from embarrassing myself. At competitions, I kept losing. No matter what, I felt like whenever I was performing, I couldn't give my ultimate performance. It almost felt silly. And that confused me for a while. But eventually, the answer came to me my Halloween of my freshman year. Now, that Halloween, not even I was too embarrassed to wear a Halloween costume. But my teammate, he was on another level. Now, this teammate, he was a speech competitor, like me. And he was this big dude, a big voice. Honestly, you might have been a little intimidated on first sight. But as soon as he opened his mouth to talk, you immediately felt welcome. He was one of the nicest people I've ever met. And his Halloween costume was Wonder Woman, skirt and all. Now, if you're wondering what that has to do with anything I just said to you, don't worry, I didn't get it at first either. But eventually, I did. Those vocal warm-ups? Yeah, they were embarrassing. That was the point. When my teammate went up there with a Wonder Woman costume, he wasn't afraid of getting embarrassed because his goal was to get embarrassed. See, the thing about presentation is that you cannot avoid getting embarrassed because whether you do well or not, you will be. And that's true of anything. Jokes, conversation. Embarrassment isn't just intrinsic to a human connection, it's necessary to one. The key is to get comfortable with embarrassment, to get comfortable with vulnerability. So, after that revelation, did I start winning? No, not really. I kept getting my ass kicked. But confidence isn't just thinking you'll do well. It's also putting yourself out there and taking a risk, whether or not it pans out. So that's what I did. I kept getting my ass kicked over and over and over. And there was a lot of losing involved. But eventually, it got to the point where I started to lose to a lesser extent. I was still losing, but eventually, I won for my first time. And then my second time. There was no third time. Okay, did you guys believe that? No, I was joking there, all right? But before I knew it, it was my senior year, and it was a national qualifier tournament. Now, I still hadn't made it to nationals. So this was my last chance to achieve my dream. So, when I presented. I danced and I sung and I walked all around. And before I knew it, it was over. And I had presented like my life depended on it, because at that point, it might have. But now, all I could do was wait for the awards. Now, when awards came up and they announced my event, I nearly peed myself. But I needed second place to make it to the national tournament. 5th place! One of my teammates. Someone I'd actually taught. 4th place! Another one of my teammates. Another person I had taught. 3rd place! This was it. This was my chance. I finally had reached my dream. All I had to do was hear my name one more time. Ryan Alex! I lost. But then, the next event came up. And the first place competitor in my event got first place again. Now, ignoring how impressive that is, the thing about the national tournament is that you're not allowed to go to Nats in 2 events. You have to choose one. So, by the end of the tournament, one of my teammates went up, without my asking them, mind you, but it was kind of them nonetheless, to ask the first place competitor which event they were going into. And they were going into the other event. My event needed an alternate. I was in, I had did it, I had won, I was finally going to Nats, I had achieved my dream, and then before I knew it, I was in the car, my dad was waiting for me, so I got in, and I told my dad I won, and my dad told me, but Brian, the week you have Nats, we're going to India to see my family that I hadn't seen in 6 years, to see my cousins, my uncles, my aunts, my grandparents, that I hadn't seen in 6 years, certainly not since the pandemic. So I had a choice. And family comes first. So, at the end of senior year, I was feeling a little bit like a loser. I mean, all of my heroes, the upperclassmen, had all gone to Nats. I had peers that were going to even bigger and bit better things, like the Tournament of Champions in Kentucky. And me, stuck here, would never have made it to Nats, who only won first place once, would ever won anything a couple of times. Now, if you're listening to that, you might be noticing I sound a little bit selfish there. But can you blame me? I had my dreams in my hands, and then they were blown to bits. So, I've been down in the dumps about that for a while. But then this year, in my JRLC class, we had to do an in-class debate. And in that debate, I was reminded of what I had done in speech and debate. The skills I had learned, the presentation, the confidence, the friends I had made, the memories I had made. And I realized I wasn't a loser. In 10 years, who gives a shit if I made it to Nats or not? Certainly not me. But in 10 years, I'll still have the skills, the memories, the friends, the confidence that speech and debate gave me. And that's what truly winning is. So, when people ask me if I won in speech and debate, I'll tell them yes, because I'll be lying to them. But, on a deeper level, it'll be true. Although yes, energy does also come from cocaine. Thank you.
That was Ryan Alex telling a story in front of 200 of his peers at UC Santa Cruz. And next up, we have Jo Martineau, who's going to tell her story next. And for those of you who have been through some similar things, you might find this personally moving or even triggering, depending on your personal experience. But I applaud these students for being brave and telling their reality. This next one is from Jo Martineau.
Hi, my name's Jo, and my Slug story starts the second week of senior year. I wake up to my alarm at 6:45. I promptly roll out of bed, not at all ready for my day. I throw on a new pair of pajama pants, a graphic tee, I brush my teeth, and I put on my Crocs. I then go downstairs where I skip breakfast, and I head out the door with my mom. We jump in the car, she turns it on, I connect my phone to the speaker, and we pull out of the driveway. She starts driving down the street, and I look out my window as we pass my high school. It's a 45-minute drive to my partial hospitalization program at Sutter's Adolescent Mental Health Facility. See, back earlier in the year, in February, I had gone to the same program I was currently driving back to. After just getting out of inpatient, a 24-hour watch facility for the second time, I was not at all ready to go back to group therapy. But after a car ride of silence, we finally arrive. My mom checks me in. I hand my phone over to the receptionist. I walk down the hall and into the group room, and there waiting for me, just as I had suspected, was Mike. He says, "What the fuck are you doing back here?" And I say, "Well, I just missed you so much I tried to kill myself just so I could see you again." You must be wondering, who is this guy? That would be the therapist who runs the outpatient program, and the biggest asshole on the face of the planet. "So, are you going to tell me what happened between you and Quinn?" he asks me. I am caught off guard, and he can tell. So he continues saying that something must have happened between us, considering that I'm back here. I flip him off, saying that I'm only here because I have to be here, even though he's right. I hate it when he's right. You see, the thing about Mike is that he could read people. He knew exactly what you were thinking and feeling just by looking at you. He knew he was right. You know he's right. It just takes everyone a little bit of time to admit that to themselves and to him. The other kids come and we start with the first group of the day, where we say what our name is, how we're feeling, what are the questions at from a scale from 1 to 5, what we want to learn about that day, and what one goal for ourselves is. I take my usual seat, sitting down on the floor, up against the wall, sitting next to the chair that I'm supposed to be sitting in. I take out a deck of cards from underneath my shirt that I had snuck in. They're rainbow, and they're a little beat up, but they're my favorite. I lay out a game of solitaire on the ground, and Mike just laughs. We go on with the rest of the groups. We only stop for a half-hour lunch break. I'm not hungry, so I lay down my 14th game of solitaire that day. I'm at about a 50-50 win rate, and the 12-year-old in the group has taken a liking, and he starts tallying my wins on the board. I later teach him how to shuffle cards. By the end of the day, I'm exhausted. Luckily, I wasn't Mike's target that day. He was too busy with the other kids to call me a little bitch like he usually would. But the last group ends, and I'm exhausted. I go home, I eat a little bit of dinner, and I fall asleep because being awake was too much. But I go back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. I get to know the other kids. I slowly tell Mike more and more. I tell him about my friends. I tell him about school. I tell him about the psych ward. I tell him about the quiet room that the psych ward locked me in for 6 hours. But I don't tell him about Quinn, because that hurt too much. By the 7th day, I've won 63 games of solitaire. I've fallen into my routine. Me and Mike are in our little group. The kids who were there when I started have gone, and new kids have come. They don't understand Mike's methods. I barely understand Mike's methods. But he was real. He was a real, genuine person who cut the bullshit and told you things as it was. Some kids thought he was mean. Maybe he was. But he was honest. And he gave us a reality check, which is what we needed. On the 8th day, he pulls me out of the group into a room to have a one-on-one with me. I go over and I sit in the corner, shuffling my cards. I like watching the colors flash by because it mesmerizes me. What happened between you two? He asks me. I really don't want to talk about it. So I play dumb. You have to tell me what happened between you two. He's persistent. So I give in. And I tell him. You see, when I had left this place a few months ago, my best friend told me that I ruined things for her by being suicidal. She then continued to harass me for the next 7 months. And Quinn, well, she decided she would rather be friends with her than be in a relationship with me. I wasn't worth losing a friend over. So not only did my best friend give up on me, but so did my girlfriend. But it's okay, I'm okay, it doesn't matter anymore. Mike's just sitting there quietly listening to me. He starts to say something, but I'm not receptive to any of it. I don't want to hear another person's opinion on this. So I walk out, and I go back to the group room, join them. They're doing music therapy. I sit in the corner silently, not saying a word the rest of the day. I've won 9 more games of solitaire by our last group, with Mike just staring at me. And then the last group comes and goes. And the other kids, they get up to leave, but what do? I just sit there stupidly. I can't seem to get myself up. I just sit there, staring out the window, crying. And Mike sits next to me. And I look at him, and I tell him that I feel like I made myself unlovable. That I drive people away to the point that they don't love me anymore. And what Mike said next will stick with me for the rest of my life. He said, I know that's not true, because anyone who knows you, Joe, can't help but love you. When you're suicidal, when you feel so low that you think the world would be a better place without you in it, this is a shocking thing to hear. You already don't feel lovable, and then someone tells you that not only are you easy to love, but people can't help but love you. That is what sticks with you. Then you add the fact that Mike was the one who said it. This big, burly war veteran with the mouth of a sailor and a big bushy beard. The one thing that I could count on and appreciate Mike for the most was his ability to be honest with me. So when he's the one that tells you people can't help but love you, you have to believe it. He's the one person I would believe anything from. I start crying more. But in that moment, I forgive myself for the things that I did wrong in my relationship. But I realized that I did not deserve the way that these people had treated me. I was not selfish for hurting. I was not crazy for expecting better treatment, and I certainly was not as disposable as these people had made me seem. So I thank him, and I leave, and I go home, and I delete Quinn's contact, and I put all of her things in a box, and I store it in the garage. I go back to group therapy the next day for the last time. At the end of my 9 days there, I have won 95 games of solitaire. The last group of the day comes, and I go over to Mike, and I give him a hug, and I thank him for saving my life. I walk out of the group room for the last time. But before I walk out completely, I turn around one last time, and I thank him for the rainbow cards he had given me months ago, because they're my favorite. Thank you.
That was UC Santa Cruz student Jo DiMartino telling her Slug story. And we are listening to stories from UC Santa Cruz students who told them in front of an audience of 200 people. And that one is going to be followed by another of similar story angle, but a little bit of a different take. You know, many young girls especially had extra diagnoses of depression during COVID. And what we're seeing as teachers is really the fallout from that experience, among other things, and also cell phone addiction and other things they're trying to cope with, world events. So these stories are really both touching and difficult to hear and hopeful as well. And this one is told by Olivia Schottke from UC Santa Cruz, a freshman this year.
I was told that I could go home for 2 extra weeks. And all I was excited. Yay, 2 extra weeks of spring break. But those 2 weeks turned into 2 months and then 2 years. And I got bored, much like I'm sure all of you did. I tried everything from video games to reading, and no hobby seemed to stick. One night, I found myself sitting bored in my room, throwing a ball against the wall. And my dad came and he asked me if I wanted to help him cook dinner. So excited at the opportunity for something new, I said yes and ran to the kitchen. He had already picked out a recipe, truffle risotto, something I had never tried. And my mother and brother sat in the kitchen with us, laughing, dancing, singing, telling jokes, while my father and I cooked. That night was the best meal I had ever had, and this routine continued for several weeks. One of us would pick out a recipe, and we would all make it together with a fun family experience. A few weeks after this first initial cooking, I asked my dad if I could find a recipe on my own. He said yes, and I fell into this rabbit hole of searching different recipes of food. I found one, and we cooked it, and it was great again. The next day, I asked if I could do the same, and I fell into slightly less good of a rabbit hole. Calories are what makes Americans fat, I read. Calories? What's that? My naive 15-year-old self proceeded to open the article and read the whole thing. That's where I learned about the most painful thing that would be in my life. I learned that a calorie, while being an energy source, also determines your weight. And me being a 15-year-old small girl, I decided that I was overweight. Was I? No. But this article had convinced me I was. That night, I opened another metabolic rate calculator app. I input my weight, my height, my activity level, and there it told me 1,232 calories. That's how many I needed to eat in order to maintain my weight, even less if I wanted to lose some. So that night I went to bed without dinner, without having fun with my family, because I told them I wasn't feeling well. The next morning I woke up, poured myself a cup of black coffee, something I learned had 0 calories, and downloaded 2 calorie counting apps, just to make sure that I wasn't overdoing it. That day, I didn't have breakfast or lunch, waited till about 3 p.m., and made myself a big lunch of plain iceberg lettuce, bell peppers, and Brussels sprouts, all things containing less than 100 calories. I ate that, told myself I was full, then went on a run that night just to burn some extra calories off. That night, I made myself cauliflower rice, no sauce, and egg white, all things I told myself were good for me. but were actually way too little. This cycle repeated day after day, drinking only coffee until 3 p.m., eating only those 3 things, because I told myself I wanted to lose weight and be smaller. These rules I had set for myself became permanent, and I followed them to a T every single day. And I hated myself if I didn't. If I ate anything before 3 p.m., I would get mad at myself. And if I ate anything other than the things I knew had specific amounts of calories in them, I would also be mad at myself. Soon enough, I started struggling in social situations. I would be sitting with my friends, wondering if she could tell me how much, by weight, that apple in her hand would be worth in calories. Or if he could tell me the difference between 2 brands of food just by looking at the labels. Or if they could all tell me, by looking at a plate of food, how long it would take to work off in the gym. Because I could do all these things, and I did every single day, every single moment. I was stuck in my own head, competing with myself towards a goal I didn't even need. But every day, I got smaller, and the fingers I put around my wrist got closer together, and the bones on my back and my ribs showed even more, and the weight on the scale went down, and I was proud of myself. Because I had made a change. I had set a goal for myself, and I had made a change. My friends would tell me, "Wow, you're so skinny." Again, I was validated. My coach told me that if you would run faster if you lost weight, so I continued to lose weight, and I continued to fade away. Soon enough, I wouldn't wake up before 3 p.m. because I was so tired that I couldn't. I couldn't leave the house wearing anything less than a sweater and sweatpants, even though it was the middle of summer. And in Southern California, that gets pretty warm. I was tired and freezing and exhausted, and I was hurting. And I was doing it alone. One night, my mom placed her hand on my back and asked me, "Are you okay, sweetheart?" And without any verbal communication, a tear rolled down my face, and she knew that I wasn't. The next day, I walked to my mom and dad, and I told them I needed help. And that was the moment things changed for me. I knew I had an issue, and I knew I was hurting myself, but to my mom and dad, I had been starving their little girl. I had been hurting the child they raised, hurting the child they were so proud of. And I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to hurt my little brother's older sister, his role model, my friends, best friends. I didn't want to hurt this person anymore. So I asked for help. And my parents helped me by getting rid of the scale and getting rid of the calories on the backs of things and sitting with me through every meal, even if it took hours. And I got a therapist, and they helped me get rid of the voices in my head that told me no. The voices in my head that told me I didn't deserve to eat or I didn't deserve to be loved because of it. And asking for help was the one thing that I know saved my life. So if you're ever struggling with anything, mental, physical, school, homework, family life, friendships, just ask for help. Because it saved my life, and I'm sure it will save yours. Thank you.
That was Olivia Schottke, a student at UC Santa Cruz, telling her story in front of 200 of her peers for the Slug Story Project at UC Santa Cruz. This is K-Squid, KSQD, Santa Cruz. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman, and you're listening to Talk of the Bay. We'll be talking with Claudia Melendez Salinas in just a minute, but first, a couple of important announcements.